trying to ditch in the English Channel. And I elected to land at a airfield in France, which we found. And as a result of that mission, I was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross.
What was the danger of flying on only 2 engines?
You couldn't maintain your altitude, and you never knew when another engine would go out, because you had to have them at full power instead of less than full power. And but we made it. And another instance, I can't remember where the target was. Oh, it was Berlin. Went into Berlin, and we lost an engine. We didn't lose 2, just 1 this time, and I had to make an emergency landing in Belgium. And then we had a third one where we had an engine shot out, and we didn't know where we were. We became all disoriented, and it shut out our whole electrical system and our hydraulic systems, and none of the instruments were working, including the compasses. So we flew what we thought was the right direction towards England, and the navigator was looking out the window to see if he could find any landmarks on the ground where he could give us a better direction to fly. And he saw some dikes in Holland, and he says, right down below us is where Hans Brinker had his finger in the dike and saved Holland from flooding. So with that identification, he gave us a hint so we could fly back to England. We managed to get back to England and landed at a emergency landing field.
Wow. So when you landed in France that first time, that had already been taken back by
yeah, just recently. We were the first, it was a P-38 fighter base, and they had taken over that airfield, less than 2 weeks before the Germans had left. Mm-hmm. And we were the first bomber to arrive there. And right next to the airfield was a English, they call them boarding schools. It was a school where, a boys' school, high school age kids. And I guess there were some junior high school kids too. And when we were getting ready to take off a couple of days later after we got the plane repaired, we were at the end of the runway getting ready to take off, and we could see all these kids looking at the plane. So I called the tower on television and says, can we park this thing here a minute and let the kids go through, come over and look at the plane? And so we did that, and we spent about a half hour just letting the kids wander through the plane and seeing the thing.
Wow.
We traded some of our hats with their beanies. They weren't beanies, they were, what would they call them?
Berets?
Berets. A lot of the French wore those. So we came back wearing berets. And the English kids had some souvenirs from us.
Nice. They were French, weren't they?
French, yeah, the French kids. So we had a good time doing that. We finally told them they had everybody get off the plane, and we started it up again and moved back to England. Those were the major things we had in combat.
When did you get hit by flak?
When we were flying over these targets.
When was your book, Escape by Mistake?
That was a fictitious story, Barbara.
Oh, that wasn't real? I thought that was real.
No. That was a story I wrote for a high school, or rather a college thesis. Parts of it were true, but not all of it.
I never knew that. You told me.
Yeah.
So what was it like? So 14 or 15 months then from the time you enlisted to
from the time I enlisted till the time I got overseas was about let's see, it would be September of 44 to, or 42 to October of 44. So it was almost 2 years of training we had. And the training is something that you don't hear too much about today or in during World War II. But the training we spent, just in cadets was about 1.5 years. And that training was very intense, and we had excellent instructors. So the time we graduated from pilot school, we were good pilots. And then going through the B-17 transition and our crew training together, we knew exactly what we were in for and how to perform. Every crewman did. So the time we got overseas and entered combat, we were well trained and well prepared.
Did you and
that was a secret of winning the war.
Did you and your original crew stay together most of the time?
We stayed together entirely. No one was injured.
Oh, that's good.
Is that rare?
Well, relatively rare. There was, you talk about, I said I joined when I was 18 years old. And you went to, took a physical when you enlisted, said you wanted to be an aviation cadet. And there were less than 10% of the people that wanted to be and go through aviation cadets that were qualified, either for mental reasons or physical reasons. And then when you got into through the pilot training, there was less than 50% of the people that entered pilot training that graduated. So the attrition rate was pretty severe in training.
So,
well, that speaks very highly of your skills.
Well, the skill of the training I had.
And the professionals that taught you.
Yeah. And I had good grades in high school, and I was good in math, and I was good in science, and I was good in English, and all the things that I needed to become an officer in the Air Force. So it was very important. Then when I got back from England, I was transferred into what they called the Ferry Command. It was the Air Transport Command in Long Beach, California, which wasn't too far from where I lived in Pasadena. And we were given the job of ferrying planes from one place in the country to another. And you never knew what airplane you were going to be flying the next day. And the typical thing they would tell you the day before says, I want you to fly a P-38 from Long Beach to, let's say, Kansas City. And when something like this had happened, you'd never been in that plane before. You didn't know how to fly it. So you went to the operations officer and checked out a manual that told you all the systems in the plane. Then you went out to the flight line and hoped you could find some crew chief, a ground crew chief, that knew something about the cockpit so he could give you a cockpit check. Then you get in the plane and take off and deliver it.
This was after the war?
After the war, yeah. After I got back from England. And I was able to fly every twin-engine and four-engine plane the Air Force had in the inventory at that time.
The Japanese war was still going on then.
Yeah. And the strangest one I had, I was asked to ferry a PBY. That's it's an amphibian plane that lands on water. And the Air Force had borrowed it from the Navy. And I had to deliver it back to the Navy at Seattle, Washington. Never been in a PBY before, never made a water landing before in my life.
You did have to make a water landing?
Yeah, I had to land in Lake Washington in Seattle, Washington. And unfortunately, when I was getting ready to land on the lake was just like glass. There wasn't a ripple in it. And when you have that situation, you lose your depth perception. And I thought I was right on the deck or right above the water, getting ready to land. And actually, I was probably 75 or 100 feet in the air when I plopped down. And I made a big splash and a very hard landing to the extent that it cracked the hull. it was leaking water. So I was able to get it back to shore and taxied it up a concrete ramp. And I very quickly I got the Navy to accept it, and I took off.
Did they know it was cracked?
Well, they suspected it, but I didn't
Offer the information?
offer too much information. Some of the other guys did, but I got out of there because I didn't want to get in trouble.
So you were expecting to hear the splash of water at any minute, and it wasn't happening.
And then I got the opportunity to go through Pan Am's flight school at Homestead, Florida. Learning how to fly a C-54 transport. It was a 4-engine transport. And I was transferred to Travis Air Force Base, which is up by San Francisco. And I flew the Pacific routes of the Air Transport Command. We go to from San Francisco to Hawaii, then to Johnson Island, to Kwajalein, Guam, Saipan, Tinian, Okinawa, into Japan, and then to China, Shanghai, and Hong Kong, and then down to New Zealand and Australia.
Wow.
And these trips were over a month long. And that was the most boring flying I have ever done, because you'd fly long stretches over water with nothing to see and get terribly tired doing it. And I was at Atsugi Airport in Tokyo, Japan. This was in January of '46. And I got a telegram from my brother. He knew I was flying into Japan. It was very short. It says, "You're enrolled in school, get out." And 10 days later, I was back in the United States going back to college.
Oh. He enrolled you?
No, I did.
Oh.
I enrolled when I got back.
Oh, he just got the notification, was forwarding it to you.
Yeah. And then my brother and myself and good friend, Dave Wood, he was a bombardier in the 15th Air Force in Italy. We took identical classes all through college. And we finished 4 years of college, working 40 hours a week in 2.5 years.
Wow.
And
That was
we had our
serious.
first